This meeting is being recorded.
Well, hello, my hey. I got something to say, ladies around the world and men that support us. Are you in for a treat today? Carrie Klewin is in the house. Hi, Carrie.
Hi, how are you? It's so good to be here with you today.
I'm so excited. I was telling her, she's like, I don't even remember who that is. I had so many people bragging about her. I couldn't freaking wait till I had her on the show. I feel like I already know you, Carrie.
I know. It's like we met in another life or something.
And I have your book. She wrote the book Origin Story, and I'm looking at the book and I'm like, wait a minute, I have that book. So I'm going to make sure I dig it up. All right.
Awesome.
Now we're going to dive right into it because I freaking love your power statement. And as many years as I've been doing this, I haven't had this ever. The key to your success is understanding what makes you truly original. Tell us what this means to you and why you picked it.
Absolutely. So my point of view right now is that if we can get to the heart, the essence of what, we hear that word authentic all of the time, but what does authenticity actually mean? It's originality. It's what makes, the simple task of making a sandwich different from you to me. It's how I do what I do, not just what I do. So I feel, you've probably heard that danger of a single story, stereotypes, lumping people all together,
Yeah.
and feeling like you need to be like other people to be successful. I believe the opposite. I believe that you really need to be yourself as much as possible and celebrate those original qualities.
I want you to dive into it more. And have you always felt this way, or when did you go, you know what?
Oh, heck
I'm
no.
not doing that anymore. I'm just doing me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that that is where I really resonate with so many people in the you've tried it every other way. You've tried it other people's ways. You followed the 10 steps to success or, what your parents told you, what you studied in school because they told you that that was the acceptable, mine was get a real job since I'm an artist, get a real job, right? Tried to follow that path. That didn't stick. Right? So you try that, and that totally happened to me. I was in denial for a really long time about following my instincts and intuition. And then I got to a certain point where I could breathe, and I see this in a lot of my peers. You get to a point where you've achieved that title or you've achieved that salary or some kind of something that clicks to say, "Hey, you're successful. You've reached what you were trying to achieve." And then you're like, this isn't it. This isn't actually what I thought it was going to be. So what do I want to do now? What's going to really bring me that satisfaction that I thought I was going to get by following other people's ideas of success?
I have this tagline that I've been saying since a kid when people would tell me how things were supposed to be. I would always say, are you sure? Are you sure it has to be
Yep.
that way? Who
Yep.
says so? Why? Because it used to drive me crazy. Like, who are those people? And why do I have to follow them?
Exactly, exactly. Who is making up these rules about what's amateur, what's professional, what's success, right? I think that you can have it all, but you can't have it all in the exact same moment, right? That there's some balance and some give and take. You asked me when I realized that maybe I needed to celebrate my originality a little bit more. And I can very much pinpoint that to a moment when my mother gave me a box of memorabilia from her basement, decades old, that I didn't want anything to do with. But since my kids are about elementary school age, I opened it up and started to go through, and I was like, oh, maybe they'll get a kick out of something in there. I found a play script that I wrote when I was like 10, 11 years old, an adaptation of Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood says no to smoking. When I
Okay.
was like 11, right? And in that moment,
Okay.
because I had been denying the fact that I was an artist, that I was a director, like this wasn't something I was meant to do. I should go get a real job. I should, try to follow somebody else's path to success. I realized in that moment that that was who I was since a very young age, and that maybe if I embraced that and leaned into it, that I would find that satisfaction that I was missing.
I want to read the story now.
It's in the book. Well, sort of, some of it's in the book.
You know, we got a lot of questions, and we're going to read, we'll call her Sally Bell because a lot of them said the same thing in different ways. When they're talking about embracing who you truly are, truly original, many of them are concerned about being an outcast.
Yeah.
So the number one thing I get over and over, all right, I'll just say it. Dear Carrie, every oh my God, every time I'm truly myself, I feel like people are laughing at me. I want to
Mhm.
underline the word at me, not with me. I'm 28. I don't think I'll ever be brave enough to risk that. Can you please help? Ooh, that's
Oh, wow.
good. Ooh, that's
Yeah. That's so it reminds me of there is a section of the book that attends to this as well, and I really talk about the misfits myth, that being a misfit is something negative, right? And that being an outsider or feeling like you don't belong is not something that everyone experiences. And the truth is that we all experience that. I can't tell you how many artists I've talked to that tell me, "Oh, I didn't have a traditional path to being an artist." Like you said earlier, who said, what's a traditional path?
yeah.
Who made up this mythical thing? And what does that mean? What's a traditional path to becoming an artist? Because I do not know one single artist that follows the exact same path as another artist. In fact, when you think about it, not one single human follows the same path, right? So, this myth or this idea that there is a right way to do things and that success is a 10-step program that is one size fits all just does not work, because my life, with the choices that I have made and my responsibilities and also my desires and interests and the way that I relate to the world, are completely unique to somebody who you might compare me to. Or
Mm,
we might be in the same industry or the same business or even have the same general goals. But again, if you go back to that, how do I do what I do? What are the values that I hold and the adjectives that I wish to describe myself? Ironically, to your reader, to your uh, questioner, one of my three adjectives that I hold is quirky. And I celebrate that because for the longest time, I too felt like a weirdo. I
yeah.
felt like a misfit. And at some point, I said, you know what? I'm going to control this narrative. I'm going to choose my own language and I'm going to embrace it. And once I started just using that as part of my bio, as part of my the way that I talk to myself, it started coming out in the way that I dress, in my physical environment, and just being myself more, right?
I love that. When I say the word wingnut, people used to call me a wingnut forever. To me, it's a compliment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When someone's like, "You're such a," and it's because I'm all over, I'm spontaneous, spur of the moment. Ooh, where's the squirrel? Where's the nut? And I remember a friend of mine saying, I don't think he means that as a compliment. I said, well, that's okay because I'm taking it as.
Yes, yes,
I love that
absolutely.
about myself, you know?
Absolutely. Like I have a good friend who, someone described her as scattered recently, and I was like, if that's not a word that you want to embrace or accept, present, which is what you're talking about, being present in the moment is such a gift that you can change that language and the way that you talk to yourself about it. So when someone says that word to you, you're translating it into your own language. And that's part of the work that I love to do is like, okay, what don't you accept? Or how are you being described? Or what is that negative self-talk that you have? And let's examine that. Let's open it up, let's dig into it, and let's see if these things that you've been telling yourself for years are even true or have any relevance whatsoever.
I love words. All right, before I go down this rabbit hole, I better tell them a little bit about you, Carrie.
Sure.
Oh my God, I knew I was going to love you. Carrie Klewin is an international stage director and architect of transformational narrative who partners with artists, institutions, and entrepreneurs to catalyze. Is it catalyze? I was like, catalyze change?
Yeah.
Catalyze change through the power of storytelling, specializing in experimental and movement-based theater, musicals, opera, and solo performance. She is known for bringing bold, embodied ideas to life both through collaborative, ensemble-driven work and deeply personal narratives. Hmm. As the author
Sent
of
me that
Origin
one.
Story, Carrie helps entrepreneurs and leaders harness their narrative to clarify vision, silence imposter syndrome, and author their next chapter with confidence and intention. Now, that's an exciting thing to do in the world. So, another big question,
Sure.
and it fits with your bio. What's the most common narrative lie that people are telling you that you work with of the entrepreneurs and artists?
That they're telling about themselves, you mean? That they're not ready, they're not prepared, that it has to be perfect, which I think are all kind of the same, three different versions of the same lie, which is that you're probably never going to be totally prepared. Nothing is ever going to be
Mm.
ready because if you're listening to those outside voices and thinking, I'm not qualified or I am not, I haven't done these three things that everyone's telling me that I need to do, then I would say you are uniquely qualified to be exactly where you are in this moment. One of my favorite taglines is we cannot predict the future, we can only prepare for it. Because we don't know what's coming, right? I didn't know when I studied public relations in undergrad that I would eventually become a director. I didn't know that I would be directing shows from a distance using Zoom or having these conversations with people around the world, right? We cannot predict the future. We don't know what's coming. But what we can do is follow those instincts and intuition and what we where our interests are.
I love that line. And it fits me so perfectly. So, what you don't know is I was a dance major that ended up becoming an entrepreneur, owning and operating health and wellness centers. No background in business whatsoever. Thought I was going to be a dancer on Broadway, then realized I wasn't that good. Then I was going to teach dance, but I kept doing what I was passionate about and what brought me joy. I had no idea or any interest when I was in college to be an entrepreneur, and yet freaking loved it.
Here you are. Well, I have a similar story in that I started out as an actor because when you're younger, it's not like somebody's going to hand a 10-year-old a director's job, right? So, like, you might have been interested in health and fitness a long time ago, but maybe that wasn't an option for what,
Right.
you're not going to be. So, if we, that's my point about following your instincts and intuition, because you keep getting drawn to these, when you look at your resume, and I tend to ask people to do what's called target potential, where we put jobs that we love in the center and jobs and experiences that we no longer are that interested in, but are part of our story on the outside to see what's drawing us towards that center. And you might be really very fascinated by what ends up in the center. So for you, it might be dance, fitness instructor. There might be this story being told, and that job didn't exist before, or you didn't know about
I
it,
got you.
right? But it's this special, unique combination, again, that goes back to your originality and your unique potential. You're uniquely qualified, right, to be
Right.
doing this particular kind of business because of your interests and experience.
There probably, I don't know if you can answer this, but I got a lot of questions on when you start with a client, how long on average does it take to you bust open and find out, ooh, this is really truly you? Like, because sometimes so many people have those layers.
Right.
Is it all so different for each individual?
I would say yes, it is, but also I'm really, really good at listening and picking up on clues. And usually, when people engage me in a conversation, there is again kind of a something under the surface that I can pick up on, and we can get to it pretty quickly. I
Gotcha.
have I have one exercise in particular that I like to use. I could do it with you if you're interested.
Oh,
It's really short.
I'm game. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So, if you could tell me three of your favorite activities, any activities, past, present, future, three activities.
Easy. Hiking, biking, dancing.
Okay. And the next step would be to tell me a core memory related to any of those three activities that just comes to mind.
I just remember the first time that I biked off road. I thought it was the most beautiful thing I have ever experienced, that I could bike and be surrounded by trees.
Okay. So, tell me just a little bit more about the sensation of that you remember those emotions and that experience of what you were starting to tell me there.
The fact that I could move and be outside and be amongst trees that I love, it was so freeing. And I also was exercising. So it was mentally and physically serving my well-being. It was just incredible.
Okay, so this is the start of a lot of my conversations with my clients. We don't talk about work. We don't talk about job and career and goals. We talk about these moments in time in your own life that have imprinted on you because they are like messages in a bottle. And they are signaling this is really important. Pay attention. I could tell when you were telling me that story that you were like kind of reliving it a little bit, and there was like some sensation and maybe even a desire to revisit that experience. Like, when's the last time you were on a bike ride like that?
Yeah. It's winter
Right?
here, so I haven't gone recently. Yeah.
Right? But who knows? Maybe in the next couple weeks, you'll just all of a sudden have that idea like, I should go for a bike ride. Um, So that's the start of our work because when you told me that story, there are some values there. There are some things that you cherish that bring you satisfaction to your life.
Mhm.
And I bet if we started talking a little bit more about the work you do now and what you want to do in the future, there would be some of those same desired qualities and experiences. Whether it
Absolutely.
was being in nature or right? So then we start to
Absolutely.
dig into how do we make that happen? How do we bring that into your life? And whether that means on a what you would call strictly personal level, although I don't believe that you can separate personal and business, whether it means where you're actually living so that there's balance in your work play, or whether it's maybe transitioning into a job that incorporates more of those types of qualities or environments into your daily life. So as you can see, we got there kind of quick, right? Now, the hard part or the probably more work intensive is creating the plan to execute,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
No, but I never did that exercise. That was freaking awesome.
So you can see that it's also in what I'm listening for. I'm looking,
Yep.
I'm reading your body language. I'm looking for these clues so that we can start to pick up those seeds that you have left behind, like the popcorn trail,
Yes.
to go back and recapture these things that you already know about yourself, right? This evidence that you already have of who you really are and what makes you so original.
I love it. I love it. And maybe I can't today go out on a bike ride, but I can go out hiking with my
There you
dog.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into the one thing you do every day to get yourself into a powerful, positive mindset. And do you do something every single day, or is it always different?
So one tactic that I have that I have been working on, and I encourage my clients to do as well, is that I set up kind of an eclectic menagerie, if you will.
I
And what
saw
that
that. I'm
means
like, I have no idea what she's talking about.
What that means is I really believe that you have, especially when you're when you're like, a few decades old, that you have in your life already evidence of who you are, how you want your life to be, and also the relationships and what other people value in you, which I think holds a lot of powerful information. For example, on my bookshelves here behind me, I have a lot of theater books. I have some other books that are really meaningful to me, but I also have like some little mementos and things that I have either picked up or that people have given to me. So one thing that I like to do when I am preparing or when I'm feeling imposter syndrome or a little bit like anxious about whatever experience or conversation I'm having is to look at something that I have and to hold it in my hand and to actually think about the story behind it,
Hmm.
which we don't do very often. So, a shortcut, like a shorthand version of that, is to pick three objects in your house
Mhm.
and put them together on a shelf and let them talk to each other for about a week just to see what kind of a story that they're telling you about who you are and um and maybe
Hmm.
something that you forgot about.
I'm looking at my desk and I have angels, dragonflies, and birds.
Oh, there you go. See, this storytelling is so clear and powerful with you,
Oh
right?
my goodness, look, here's the bird. I have a bird. I have five angels and a dragonfly. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, I talk a lot about evidence because for a long time, going back to one of your earlier questions about like at what point did you realize that you wanted to celebrate that originality? It's looking at the evidence, the hard evidence, like a little bit of a scientist, right? Like I make lists of things like how is my life different? What are my responsibilities and priorities? What are the different categories of my life that are competing with each other, right? I can't be the same type of a director that another person could who doesn't have three children to take care of, right? Like we are not the same. Also, the evidence, like I said, of your certificates, your degrees, your thank you notes from people, your gifts from people and how they appreciate you and what those relationships are. That's all evidence of who you are that I think sometimes we take for granted and we don't take those moments to think, you know what? I'm this complicated person who's very unique and original, and I'm not going to try to be like anyone else because I can't really, right? You cannot be an imposter if you're being yourself,
Yeah, I
because
love
the
that line.
definition
I love
of,
that line. I love it. I mean, it
oh,
says everything. You can't be an imposter when you are truly being yourself. Like, who needs more?
right,
I mean, seriously, you can't be both. It's like you can't be angry and joyful in the same moment. You just can't,
right.
you know? So there are a lot of people that really don't even know how to discover or where to begin about who they are. And I don't know if you hear that at
Sure.
all, but they're like, they have no, like if I said this to them, they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, I don't even know who am I truly?
Yeah.
And because they
That's,
feel like they've lived so much for what their family expected of them.
mm-hmm.
And then they have, before you know it, two or three kids, and they're like, wait a minute, this was
Yep.
just the easiest path or the path of least resistance. They have nowhere, they don't know where to start.
Yeah. Well, women especially, right? Because we often suppress our instincts and intuition to please, to serve, to be like, to, be quiet, be good,
Yeah.
smile, right? These are a couple of, I call them detours, and we take a lot more detours on average in our lives. I think it's becoming maybe a little bit less of that as more women are pursuing careers and doing things, and there's more partnerships, which I like to like. For example, I had this whole conversation recently with of someone about this idea of a breadwinner. And I said, "Oh, wow, we are participating in this language. Why? Because to have a breadwinner means there's a loser in the house."
Yeah.
And I'm not
Yeah.
going to participate in that. Like, we make bread in our house, but there are no winners or losers. We make these joint decisions. Um, and so I think, yeah, at some point, so many people, I think, are influenced. We want to make the right decisions. We want, based on survival sometimes. Maybe you're a single parent who has to make decisions because you have responsibilities. And at some point, you might get to a point where you're like, okay, I don't have as many responsibilities, or I'm more financially stable, or I've been doing this job to, strictly for the paycheck. It's not really something I like or enjoy. Um, it's difficult, I think, for a lot of people at that point, because then it does become a case of imposter syndrome. Well, I'm not qualified to do anything else, or I don't know how to do anything else, right? And that's when I think you can start to look at those activities, like I asked you
Yeah.
about, and maybe pick up something that you put on the shelf a long time ago, a photography class or a dance class, or, start to take a piano lesson, or, there's a lot of free resources to do these things too, just to test out the waters, to get to know yourself a little bit more. I think that's a really good way to take some baby steps towards, do I like this? Do I not like this?
For somebody who feels stuck, meaning, like you said, single parent, or they feel like they can't take a pay cut. They're in a
Yeah.
position that, like, I have friends that are lawyers who don't want to be lawyers anymore, but have
Yeah,
a really good living.
sure.
Is there ways to like stay at the job but embrace more of who they are while they're there versus, hey, honey, I'm quitting my job and then
Of course. That's what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about a plan for the future or a strategy, right? To look at the reality of your situation, and then to maybe start to implement small steps, whether it is taking that class or going to that social hour or that networking. But that requires setting up some clear boundaries of your time, and really looking at what your priorities. It's, the cost, the cost and benefit, right? And the way that I encourage people to look at their time is to actually literally write it down. Like, how many hours are you spending a week doing XYZ? And if you're looking at these different categories in your life, whether that's, for me, it's stage director, wife, mother, friend, self-care,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Talking to a fitness coach here, right? Self-care. These are all really important. So I have to look at the literal hours a week and say, okay, well, I'm going to have to limit these hours here and there because we know a paycheck is extremely important, but it's not everything, right? If you don't have your health, then making all of the money might not be as beneficial, right? So really looking at things, and I literally have people write down a schedule and look at it in black and white because I think sometimes people are really surprised, like, oh, I need a couple of hours a week to spend with my friends or my family, or, I'm a pet owner and I have to be home to like walk the dog literally. There's some really basic things, but at the same time, when you start to make those choices very consciously, then it's very helpful for being able to implement other activities, hobbies, these kinds of things into your life.
So we just had this conversation the other night. One of the guys was saying he hated what he did.
Mm,
And our friends were saying, well, if money didn't matter at all, what would you do? And everyone was saying answers, but he doesn't like what he's doing, but he had no clue. So that's where you would come in because he
yeah,
was
yeah.
saying, so they're like, they kept pushing him. And he's like, I don't know. Well, you say you hate your job, but you're doing it for the money. Well, let's say you inherited all this money. What would you do? He,
Well, and yeah, I think also people get comfortable. We develop habits and we get very comfortable, and we do not want to be uncomfortable, right? So not liking what you do, how much does that impact your daily life? You're coming home in a bad mood, you are short-tempered with people, you're exhausted at the end of the day versus maybe looking at your job responsibilities and kind of changing the balance of that, or
yeah.
delegating, or maybe there's another position in the company, or maybe you can do the same kind of work in another environment. Maybe it's the people you're working with, maybe it's the content of the material. I'll tell you that one of my jobs has been as a professor at a bakery.
Okay.
A theater professor at a bakery, right? How does that work? Well, because it
I
was
don't know. I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
so this is an example to say, like, there's a lot of possibilities out there because I was looking for a job, and I saw an advertisement that was looking for a theater professor in a bakery, and I was like, "Ah, well, color me intrigued." And it was a program
Yeah.
started by a Jesuit priest who ran a theater school and opened this bakery as a small business model to help military veterans, spouses, and caregivers become entrepreneurs. So it kind of transitional program. And they wanted a storytelling, public speaking coach, for this program. And he had been, while he was involved with the company, he had been fulfilling this role. And so I bring this example up because I was using my skills as a stage director and theater
Mhm.
professor in a very unusual situation where I was also serving a community that I'm passionate about because my husband is retired from the military. But it was
Oh.
because I kind of was okay starting something new and trying something different. I could have said, "Oh, I don't know, a bakery. Like, I don't want to, I don't know anything about baking."
Yeah.
Right? I could have ended the conversation there. Um, but I think sometimes we really, really limit ourselves because we are comfortable where we are, right? The security of that paycheck coming in is we're letting that override that knowledge of I could find something that I would like to do better. Sure, maybe there's a pay cut, but maybe you take a step back in order to take 3 steps forward. Because I know one thing for sure, when you love your job and people see that, you radiate a kind of energy that leads to success.
So did you like the job?
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. It's one of the reasons that I wrote the book because when I started doing that work, I was working with people to help them tell their story, like creating TED Talk style keynotes where they were digging into their own personal stories and sharing their inspiration, their origin stories about how they created their business or their why. And it opened up a whole new line of not just the way that I worked, but also new clients. And then I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders now who are interested in this same kind of storytelling that we were talking about earlier, where there's some vulnerability in that personal connection, right?
That reminds me, when I was in Portland, I forgot the name of the place, but it was homemade pies here on one side, and on the other side, it was helping women love money. It, and there were all these books and coloring books and getting you in the right mindset to embrace abundance
Yeah,
in the same place. Homemade pies and teas, and
right.
let's make money. It
Yeah, absolutely.
was awesome.
Yeah, because, I don't know about you, but I was taught very clearly you do not bring your personal life to your work. You don't mix these two things, which is just completely ridiculous. Like, how do you function and
It's
pretend like part of,
impossible, first of all. Yeah.
right? Right. And so I think that as we are moving forward, we're realizing that these combinations of life, whether it's eating or socializing or, these events, they are essential to business, to entrepreneurial efforts, to, the way that we relate to people. I think one of the reasons that people are so drawn to the idea of origin story and storytelling is that we all struggle to communicate. We all struggle to talk about ourselves and to express our needs and wants and to do it in a way that doesn't sound like you're selling something,
Yeah.
or that's heavy-handed or just, I need a job or I want a job, right? But to be able to really connect to people and have something to say that is of value and is helpful. And you mentioned catalyst before. It changes you as you are looking at your own story to evaluate it to make sure that because you have evolved since you started telling yourself these stories, some of them no longer exist, these things that you thought about yourself, and to grow and change in them and then be able to affect change with whoever you are speaking to, whoever your audience is, whether that is somebody who could possibly hire you in the future, an interview, or it's that TED Talk where you're like, actually, I have something of value to communicate with this particular audience or community.
Yeah, I know this might be difficult, but is there's one thing that anybody out there that's really confused besides working with you and buying your book? What's one thing they could do to start truly understanding who they are? What's one step they could take today?
I think it goes back to that idea of looking around your life and finding that evidence. So I encourage people to, get that box of random memorabilia out of your mother's basement or to, dig up the old mixtapes or to look through your book collection or your yearbook or, you don't have to go back to, I say when you were younger. That could be like a few weeks ago, or it could be a couple of years ago. It could be before that relationship started, or before that job started, or before you lost your way and realized that you were in a job you couldn't stand anymore. What were you doing before that? What were those things that you did to make money that were attractive to you before? Was it like dog walking? Was it, taking people for bike tours in the forest? Like, what are those things? Because you already have that evidence. You already know the answer is not in some how-to book somewhere on a shelf somewhere, or in here's my 8 ways to be successful. I mean, some of that's helpful. You can try it on and see which of those steps applies to you, but really you already know, you already have the knowledge. You just need to reconnect with it.
I like that. All right. Before we get into where they can find you, is there
Sure.
anything we didn't get in today that you want to say before we sign off?
I just really want to underscore the fact of celebrating that originality, because I think that especially in our society, we feel like being an outsider or being different is something that is negative. And when you look at, if you can name 2 or 3 people that you admire and you think have a really solid, excellent career, when you start to look at that person and think about what makes them totally original, you're going to realize they're not like anyone else, right? That secret to success is that original story, is your individual origin story, and that things in your past that may have hindered you or that may have slowed you down, or those detours, they are what makes you original. You wouldn't be where you are right now. And good things are coming. You can't predict the future, but you can prepare.
Oh, Carrie, I'm so glad we met. I'm so glad you came on the podcast. I really appreciate your time and working it out with the kids and everything. Because I know,
Yeah, absolutely.
how can
Absolutely.
they find you and how can they purchase your book?
Sure. The book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, the normal places, and Audible, Kindle, all of those versions. I did narrate it myself, so you'll hear more of me. It's coming out in Spanish soon. I've been working on translating it. And you can find me on my website, which is carrieklewin.com. And also, I am going to be releasing a video self-guided course soon that accompanies the book. And eventually, there's a journal as well that goes along with the book with a bunch of these kinds of exercises that,
Oh,
are
cool.
probably something that seem a little bit familiar, but the way that I ask the questions, I think, is a little bit different and helps people like your friend who's stuck and feels like they, don't know what to do, and they feel, you know, like they maybe are in a box to kind of break out of that a little bit and start moving forward.
I absolutely agree that it sounds familiar, but the way you ask it, it's totally different. I
Great.
totally agree with you. And I'm sure you're really helping so many people, which is so powerful. I'm so happy you're doing this in the world. All right, my hey, I got something to say. People, thank you. I appreciate all your support. Karen, I would love it if you share it, like it, rate it. You know, there's so many people that could benefit from listening to Carrie. And until next time, toodles. Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.